Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Louis Costello, and I serve as chairperson of the University of Pittsburgh's Board of Trustees. I'd like to welcome everyone to the public meeting of the board. The meeting has been duly advertised as a public meeting in accordance with the Sunshine Act and is therefore open to members of the public as observers. This meeting is also being streamed on the university's YouTube channel. The meeting is being recorded and will later be made available via the Board of Trustees website. A quorum is present for the transaction of business. Participation in this meeting is limited to the members of the board and to those individuals the board is invited in advance to take part. I'd like to acknowledge and welcome our ex officio trustees attending today: Governor Shapiro's designee, Dan Frankel, Allegheny County Executive Sarah Innamorato, and Kate Shaw, Secretary of Education's Education Woman's designee, to the meeting today. Now, the minutes of the board's December 19th, 2023 meeting were distributed to you in advance of today's meeting and can be found in the meeting materials. Are there any corrections to those minutes? May I have a motion and a second? All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you. The minutes of the December 19th, 2023 public board meeting of the trustees as circulated hereby are approved. We're going to now call on Chancellor Gable for her report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the board. I'm pleased to be with you this afternoon and looking forward to providing some updates and also giving a deeper dive update into the strategic planning process as it unfolds. So with regard to updates, I'm pleased to report that in November, Pitt received the 2023 C. Peter McGraw Community Engagement Scholarship Award. This is the highest honor for community engagement given by the Association of Public and Land-Grant Universities. And this recognition is noteworthy not only because community impact has always been a priority for Pitt, but in recent years it's become an increasingly important measure of university quality. And it also signifies that Pitt is home to some of the best current examples of community-engaged research in the nation, including the Pittsburgh study, which was the key project for this award, which was launched in 2018 by Liz Miller and Terrence Dermody in our Department of Pediatrics. Special thanks to the leadership of Senior Vice Chancellor for University Relations, Kevin Washoe, and Vice Chancellor for Engagement and Community Affairs, Lena DiStilio. An exciting offshoot of the work we do in the community and an intersection between our community engagement and research activity is BioForge. And one of the places where we're making a really focused investment through our developing plan for Pitt is in the BioForge effort, which is a planned biomanufacturing facility at Hazelwood Green. Since the last time we presented, construction was approved by the Pittsburgh Planning Commission, and we expect the groundbreaking, to take place later this spring. Also, last month, Ken Gabriel was named as the inaugural CEO of Pitt BioForge and founding director of Pitt's Advanced Biomanufacturing Institute. Ken is someone known to many of us. He's an excellent choice to lead BioForge's mission to accelerate breakthroughs in the development and manufacturing of precision medicines. While we're talking about research, in December, the new HERD rankings came out, which is the National Science Foundation's report on higher ed R&D expenditures. And that came out with a $1.25 billion announcement in our research expenditures, which puts us at number 16 out of 900 institutions, 16th out of 900 institutions ranked, thanks to a 10% increase in research expenditures over the previous year, with thanks to all of our scholars and the leadership of Dr. Rob Rutenbar. One of our faculty that I'd like to highlight who recently received honors is Rory Cooper, who is also known to all of us, who was awarded the nation's highest honor for technological achievement, the National Medal of Technology and Innovation, which recognizes his career-long efforts to improve assistive technology for those with disabilities. And just this week, Rory was elected a member of the National Academy of Engineering, which is a remarkable recognition of the quality of his scholarship and the impact of his work. Members of the board, in our shared commitment to student success, I have a few things I'd like to note in the ways in which our Pitt students continue to impress us and inspire us. So we've seen perennial strong showings with the Gilman Scholarship, and we were also just named a Fulbright top producer, along with other prestigious scholarships that I'd like to mention. For example, a Pitt medical student won first place in the graduate student category at the 2023 Collegiate Inventors Competition for inventing a test to detect brain aneurysms. The most recent Forbes 30 Under 30 for healthcare list includes a trio from Pitt, 2 bioengineering students and 1 recent College of Business Administration graduate. They have a startup with an algorithm for identifying heart abnormalities. And a Pitt women's volleyball standout was recently named the 2023 ACC Co-Scholar Athlete of the Year. To enhance greater access and affordability, we recently announced the Pitt Finish Line grants, which will begin in fall of 2024. These just-in-time grants provide financial support for undergrads 1 to 2 semesters from graduation and focus on supporting students at risk of getting off track when the finish line is in sight. We also just held Pitt's first ever December commencement, welcoming nearly 700 of our students and their families to the Pete. Commencement is always a very special day for all those involved. It was an honor to experience my first Pitt commencement with those 700 families, and we wish all of our graduates the very best. Last month, Governor Shapiro announced a new framework for higher education in the Commonwealth, which proposed 3 initiatives. The first is to create performance-based funding for the state-related universities. The second is an approach to merge Pennsylvania State's system of higher education with community colleges across the Commonwealth. And the third is to overhaul student aid distributed by the state, including new large Pennsylvania Higher Education Assistance Agency grants for Pennsylvania students. Under this new system, families making up to $70,000 would pay no more than $1,000 in tuition and fees per semester at state-owned universities and community colleges. Governor Shapiro further highlighted this plan during his budget address on Tuesday, and Pitt's Office of Government Relations and Advocacy is already partnering with our state-related peers to analyze the governor's proposal and coordinate activities as critical details remain to emerge. They're also working closely with parties in the legislature and the governor's office to shape the details of these initiatives. The university will continue to aggressively pursue a fair funding formula that benefits our students and allows us to do our very critical work for the entire Commonwealth and beyond. A couple of updates around campus. So we have several searches underway. The provost search is nearing the end of the interview phase on schedule. The pool was excellent and has yielded excellent candidates, and we anticipate meeting our goal of introducing the next provost imminently. My sincere thanks to Search Committee Chair Anantha Shekhar and all the members of our community who've participated thus far. Our new Dean of Dental Medicine was announced in October, Marnie Oakley, who many of us know is a Pitt alumna and longtime faculty member, who also served as interim dean since the previous year. And we have 3 dean searches ongoing. Engineering and finalist interviews are being scheduled to happen next month. Education, the position profile is complete and candidates are being recruited. And law, where the search committee will be put in place during spring break, and the search will launch shortly thereafter. All 3 designed to finish out in time or sequenced so that our new provost can participate in the selection of those deans, and those deans can know who the provost will be and that they would be reporting to. For the Vice Provost for Student Affairs, the position profile was recently completed and candidates are now being recruited in earnest. And we want to thank Dean of Students Carla Panzella, who is serving as our interim in this role since Kenyon Bonner's departure to UVA earlier this year. Finally, Hari Sastry is stepping down on March 1st to become CFO at his alma mater, and he has been an excellent partner to me and countless others. We wish him the very best in his return to DC. And Thurman Wingrove, who many of us know, longtime member of the CFO's leadership team and currently university controller, will serve as the acting CFO starting in March. So many thanks to Thurman for his willingness to take on that responsibility. We will sequence the searches that I just identified and work through those, and then we'll kick off our process for identifying the next CFO. So members of the board, at this time, I want to shift gears and give you a strategic planning update, which we formally discussed at the September meeting. And I want to start by level setting to remind you where we are in our timeline, and then talk about where things are going in the future. So first, I want to remind everyone either on the board or who may be watching where Plan for Pitt has been. So Plan for Pitt has been in process for many years and has had a couple of iterations. The most recent version of Plan for Pitt really began in its design through a very robust shared governance process with a representative committee back in 2019. Lots of conversations, retreats, listening sessions, surveys, literally thousands of data points from different stakeholders within the community on what our plan could be, what we could be and should be. And that really started to take shape in phase 2 of that process from 2021 to 2023. That yielded a collective set of values that I have said many times publicly and will repeat again today, that in many ways that's the hardest part, is the articulation and capture of the ethos and identity of the institution that often defies a verbal architecture. But this group did that in a way that allows us to really take the next steps, because translating the values into action is where we're able to really put something in place that allows us to be the mission-based institution that we're committed to being. So I feel very fortunate that the strategic planning process was set up for success when I had the honor of arriving in July. So as early as my conversations in pursuit of this position and during my onboarding over the summer and in the first few months I've been here, we did a lot of listening sessions and public and community engagement, both for my own learning curve, but also to listen and learn about where the community would like to see the strategic plan go. Many of you reached out about that and engaged in that. And we made a presentation in September that I'll refer to in just a second. But before I do, I want to talk about where that fits into the timeline going forward. So I'll remind you in a moment of where we left things in September, but I want to highlight the highlighted item on the timeline on the slide that you can all see that talks about action items for February 2024, which is obviously where we are now. So when I came in, we were at 100,000 feet on what our strategy could be. And we took that probably, we'll say, down to 75,000 feet with the articulation of the values into action. Where we are today is at about 30,000 feet, give or take, where we're thinking about what it is we will actually be doing, and we can see it in a realistic and applied way, with the goal of landing the plane, so to speak, in April, at the April board meeting, with actual metrics and targets and meaningful ways to measure the impact of the initiatives that we undertake in the strategic planning process. But before we can really get to progress cards and metrics, we have to have a sense of community buy-in about this 30,000 foot point. What are we measuring? What does all this mean to us? And that's where I want to make sure we spend our time today. So back in September, when we talked about the values, I was able to show you what the community had already articulated. And you see that on the right-hand side of the slide. On the left-hand side of the slide is the way in which, based on the community feedback that I described earlier, we were able to think about how these values inform action. What does it mean to look at these values, know this community in all the different ways that we are members of this community, and answer the cornerstone question of what is the plan for Pitt? What is it? So the answer to that question is the list you see on the left-hand side. We will cultivate student success. We will propel scholarship, creativity, and innovation. We will be welcoming and engaged. We will promote accountability and trust, and the notion of the fact that it is possible at Pitt. So we took that list to you in September. We spoke about it at every shared governance moment we could have. We went to everyone's retreats. We did community surveys on campus, off campus, sidebar conversations, lots and lots of feedback. Lots of feedback, and very positive, meaningful, and instructive feedback that made us feel like we've hit the right intersection between the values that were previously articulated and how we can start to look at those values in the context of action. So now we're asking ourselves, what do these values mean? How do we cultivate student success? How do we propel scholarship, creativity, and innovation, and so on? So I want to start with how we cultivate student success. So in thinking about the idea that we will cultivate student success, of course, there's no one in this community who would say we would ever do anything otherwise. Student success is the cornerstone of what we do. It's in very large part why we're here. And so there's not a question of disagreement about the concept, but there can be a very wide range of opinion about what it means and how you would actually act upon it. So we did a lot of listening sessions around what we wanted to incorporate in our definition at the University of Pittsburgh for what it means to cultivate student success for each individual student as they pursue their studies, for what their life is like outside of school, and then for our students as a whole, as a community, as a stakeholder group. We consulted with all those groups. We consulted with you. We looked at our own subject matter expertise. We looked at what our peers and aspirants are doing. And this is the list of attributes that emerged. And as you go from 1.1 to 1.8, what you see is the arc of the student experience, starting with how we bring students to campus and being intentional and planful around that, undergraduate, graduate, and professional, regardless of the area of study, regardless of the campus they pursue, thinking of how we look at them in total as a total size, how we might look at them across different areas of diversity, ethnic diversity, in-state, out-of-state, Pell eligible, different academic acumen, et cetera, and being intentional and purposeful about how we create the plan to invite those students here and have the students that we invite ultimately choose us. Once they arrive, we are looking at their access and affordability. In retention, we are looking at their progress towards degree. Students were very productive advocates around their expectations for support. This leans into their mental health, physical well-being, academic advising, and housing. We want to make sure that what they study is excellent and prepares them for that first job and for a life well lived and the careers of tomorrow. That they have the chance for distinction. Gilmans, we heard about Fulbrights, maybe we're due for another Rhodes, something along those lines, perpetually advancing our students at the highest levels of excellence, that they finish and graduate, which is always a goal, and then that once they graduate, they are able to pursue what they want as their job, graduate school, our professional students get their licenses, et cetera, and that they are engaged with the Alumni Association. So we work through a list of attributes like that and start to consult that list as we're doing today. But concurrently, I want to give you a sense of what that means for us managerially, that we look at what it means to develop the plan, means that we're also concurrently looking internally at all of the programs we have going to bring these to life, all of the activities that are happening within all of the different units of campus, and synthesize that so that when we come back to you in April with projected targets and metrics, we know where we can draw from in order to ensure that we're progressing towards the outcomes that we hope to achieve. If we move on to scholarship, creativity, and innovation, how do we propel scholarship, creativity, and innovation? We do it by, at the cornerstone, increasing research. And this is anchored in federally funded research, and you will regularly hear my colleague Rob Rutenbar, excuse me, reporting that we have, and I just did myself, we've crossed the $1 billion mark. We are at 1.25 billion last year in the HERD rankings. That is a wonderful objective measure of research productivity, but it is one measure, and we want to make sure we look at our scholarship in a very holistic way. One of the things we heard from a lot of different stakeholders, certainly faculty and staff, but others too, is that we have opportunities around the comprehensiveness of the faculty and staff on this campus that we could do even more with in terms of multi and interdisciplinary research and work, and we want to make sure we incentivize and encourage that, remove barriers to that. Where appropriate, we want that research to yield innovation and creative tech transfer, commercialization, intellectual property opportunities. We want to remember where we are and think about our neighborhood that we're engaging with the businesses here and other partners. We want to keep an eye on the very robust areas of campus that may not traditionally receive federal funding and yet are also excellent. The arts, the humanities, social sciences, professions. This is things like peer-reviewed publications, books, exhibits, performances, and we want our faculty and staff to also be able to pursue distinction, like Rory did with the admission into the National Academy of Engineers and a variety of other designations that we would hope our faculty are able to achieve. We also commit and have as a pillar that we want to be welcoming and engaged. We want to be representative. We're a public institution. We should reflect the communities that we serve demographically, but also excuse me, we do a lot of business here. We buy a lot of things, we engage a lot of services, and we want to make sure that we are thoughtful and purposeful about creating opportunities when we do so for supplier diversity, minority-owned business, women-owned business, and other ways of ensuring that we create the right pipelines for the communities in which we operate. We want our campus culture to be welcoming and cultivate a sense of belonging. We want to be an employer of choice. We have tens of thousands of people who work here. We're one of the largest employers in the region. And we want to make sure that everyone who works here, faculty, staff, everyone, has the appropriate amount of satisfaction, fulfillment, and optimism about showing up for work every day. That they feel respected, that they see dignity in their role, that they see opportunity that is fairly and equitably distributed, and that they're paid fairly. And we are, I think, doing a lot of really good things there, but we have more work to do. And it's changing in real time, and we want to be intentional about that. We are a standard setter in community engagement. I mentioned earlier in my report the McGraw Award that we won. We want to make sure that we are always operating at that level and supporting the communities that we serve, and we want to make sure our global footprint is meaningful. That leads us into thinking about our next pillar, which is that we hold ourselves accountable and we promote trust. So when I arrived over the summer, we were finishing the budget and beginning the process of working with the legislature for this year's appropriation. And those were both journeys, I think very well reported journeys. And so when I was thinking about the institution's accountability and how it faces outward, I was thinking primarily about our fiscal transparency and our assurance to all of our partners that if you invest in us with your tuition dollars or your time or your philanthropy or your research support, that you can trust that the university is stewarding those resources well. Now I think this has taken on a lot of flavor, this conversation, over the last few months, and I think we should embrace that and think of it as an opportunity for distinction. So in addition to just traditional fiscal transparency, we're also working on our master plan and our digital infrastructure. We want to make sure we manage risk well, that we are safe, and we see our law enforcement taking care of us right now. We want to make sure that that permeates our community, which they do an excellent job with, that our information is safe, that we have cyber safety as well. And then I want to take us to our last two, which are really sort of where things are going in higher ed, that we think about our story. Now that has had some traditional attributes. You know, we sometimes roll our eyes at things like rankings, but we pay attention to them. They're relevant for sure for the work that we do. We measure philanthropic support, that's part of our story. Athletics is a big part of our story. Many people have heard me refer to an expression that I heard from one of my colleagues earlier in my career, that athletics is the front porch of the institution. But also I think there's work for higher ed to do, and the University of Pittsburgh is not immune, in making sure that the good work that we do and the impact that we have is known and not reactively offered in response to other negative press, either about higher ed in general or even sometimes occasionally about us. That there's really good work happening here that benefits a lot of people, including our students, faculty, and staff, but goes beyond that, and we want to make sure that we are overt and thoughtful about putting that information out. And then we want to make sure that in the process of learning and engaging, that on this campus we can have the free exchange of ideas, that we can have diversity of thought, that we can have constructive dialogues. And that was presumed, I think, for many years, one could argue for many centuries, but I think recent events have shown us that we need to be purposeful and intentional about this too. The University of Pittsburgh is one of the founding members of the Campus Call for Free Expression. This is a national effort, and we're really proud to work with our colleagues to develop the best practices so that our campus can be a place for learning, even amidst disagreement. And then last but not least, the last pillar is this notion that it is possible at Pitt. So I have heard for the years that I've been engaged here as a Pitt mom, or having friends who live here, friends on the faculty here, that there are amazing things happening here that maybe you don't know about if you're not directly connected to the community. And I can say, having arrived relatively recently, that Pitt's national reputation is extremely strong, but there is a wide-held belief that I agree with, that the reality is even better than that reputation, and we want to close that gap. We want the world to know about the amazing things that we're doing. We want to lean into our distinct strengths and take shots, strategic risk and investment, excellence in things that we can uniquely do well. So what are things that are possible here that you can only do here? We think we can lead the life sciences century. That's the BioForge initiative. We think we have unique ways of looking at the impact of climate change on health. You just saw Rory Cooper's incredible work around assistive technologies, Dr. Sahel's work restoring sight to the blind, and other things that we don't know about yet, that we haven't thought of yet, that may not have percolated up yet, that may not have their moment yet, but we want to make sure we leave the space so that when they do percolate up, we're ready and we can lean into them and advance them and promote them. We want to make sure that we are pushing ourselves and that we are naming and acknowledging that we need to push ourselves in order to continue to be excellent. So in the days ahead, we take this work, we go out into the community, we think about how this feels to the different members of our community, what this means in terms of the work that we're already doing, what this means in terms of the work that we need to do, and how this gives us the architecture for us to tell our story, how this gives us a way for us to make sure that the world knows how amazing things are here, that the national reputation is good, but the reality is even better. And I'm excited to share a sneak preview of this type of storytelling. There's much more to come, but this is how we lift this sort of thing off.
Part of the University of Pittsburgh is the Cathedral of Learning.
There's a lot you can say about this place. Gritty? Well, we prefer tough. Resilient. Innovative, of course. We are part of the city that built the backbone of America, and now we're making it bend and flex in every which way.
Your time at Pitt has also prepared you for what is possible.
But there's one thing you can't deny. When the world needs something, we find a way to give it to them. Whether that's defeating a crippling disease,
Exhausting labor that paid off.
or fighting off the world's next life-threatening illness, we focus our eyes and attention on the ones who need us most, day in and far out.
So the question we have to deal with is, can we work and build together even when we're different?
All this comes naturally when you've built a foundation on community in a city that feels more like a family at a time when there's basically no other choice. So yeah, there's a lot we can say about this place. But this is what we know. We know that we've earned more than $1 billion in research funding just this year alone. We know that we're breaking ground for more groundbreaking innovation. We know that if you throw a problem our way, we'll do the work to solve it.
You are here, standing, greeted by the end of one journey and the beginning of the next.
We know that it's possible at Pitt.
So, Mr. Chair, that concludes my report.
Excellent report, Chancellor.
Thank you.
Any questions or comments? Well, the comment that I'll make is, in the short time that you've been here, as you said, phrased it, this plan to me is incredibly thorough. It's incredibly inspirational. We should be proud to amplify this story. It's a great story. That Pitt's impact is real. It's significant, and we need people to understand that the brand will catch up with the delivery, and the brand's strong. Delivery is even stronger. So, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Now I will call on Property and Facilities Committee Chairperson Peter Verischetti for the Property and Facilities Report.
Thank you, Chairperson Costello. During the public meeting held on February 7th, 2024, the Property and Facilities Committee approved 2 capital projects, including the renovation of the Titusville Campus McKinney Student Union for the Manufacturing Assistance Center, which is part of the Campus Hub partnership to better serve the Titusville area and surrounding communities. The committee approved this project in the amount of $7 million. The committee also approved the Benedum Hall sub-basement HVAC upgrades required to support new programs for the Swanson School of Engineering. The committee approved this project in the amount not to exceed $7,700,000. Combined, these projects are projected to generate 102 construction and support jobs for the state and regional economies. The committee also approved 3 lease renewals, including a lease renewal at the Bridge on Forbes for 230 student housing beds and 50 parking spaces, with the option to add up to 51 beds based on demand. The lease term is 4 years, starting in August 2025. The committee approved the lease renewal with a total term rent of approximately $17,900,000. Also, the renewal of the agreement where the university as landlord leases approximately 203,000 square feet of space in Allen McGee Scaife Hall to UPMC Presbyterian Shadyside. UPMC wishes to renew the lease for an additional 5 years through June of 2029. The committee approved the lease renewal with a total term rent of approximately $32,300,000. Also, renewal of the agreement where the university leases approximately 84,000 square feet of space in Falk Clinic to UPMC Presbyterian Shadyside. UPMC wishes to renew the lease for an additional 5 years through June 2029. The committee approved the lease renewal with a total term rent of approximately $7,300,000. Thank you, Chairperson Costello. This concludes my report.
Thank you, Pete. Any questions or comments for Pete? Well done. So now on to the Governance and Nominating Committee. David Shavrin. David will give us reports on actions regarding the Governance Review Project.
Great. Thank you very much, Chairperson Costello. We have 3 important things to address today. One is the set of proposals related to the ongoing Governance Review Project, election of emeritus trustees, and the election of a chairperson-elect for the board. So starting at the beginning, the Governance and Nominating Committee of the board was charged with conducting a review of the board's processes and procedures and offering proposals to revise those processes or procedures, as well as change or amend the board's structure and operations in order to improve independent oversight of the university functions and activities and enhance the board's governance system. This process is expected to carry through the board's April 4th public meeting, but the committee is prepared to make several recommendations to the board today. And with that, beg the indulgence of the chair, I'd like to read a set of resolutions that I believe are reflective of the materials that have been provided to the board, and also reflective of input we've received from the board about the project. Whereas the Governance and Nominating Committee was charged with the responsibility of conducting a review of the board's processes and procedures, including its bylaws and all relevant resolutions of the board, conducting an independent review of these processes and procedures, and offering proposals to change or amend those processes or procedures for the board's consideration. And whereas, consistent with that charge, the Governance and Nominating Committee presented a set of options to the board for its deliberation, which would reduce the size of the board, reimagine the role of emeritus trustees, change requirements regarding term limits of term trustees, require a vice chairperson as an officer of the board, reduce the number of committees, and revise the authorities of those committees, amend the scope of the executive committee's responsibilities, and improve member engagement. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the non-voting trustee category of the the non-voting trustee category of special trustee and the voting category of alumni trustees are eliminated, and no new trustees would be elected to these categories. Now, therefore, be it further resolved that the current alumni trustees are converted to term trustee status, and the Governance and Nominating Committee is directed to provide for board review and ultimate approval a proposal for, one, the phased transition of the current special trustees, including the chair of the UPMC board, to the status of term trustee. And such special trustees shall retain the ability to vote on committees while this phased transition occurs. And two, any special considerations that the board should afford past presidents of the Pitt Alumni Association. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Governance and Nominating Committee is directed to oversee the drafting and proposed revisions to the bylaws for submission to the board for review and ultimate approval, which will implement the elimination of the special alumni trustee categories and will include a new requirement that at least 6 of the non-Commonwealth trustees be alumni of the university. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Governance and Nominating Committee is directed to develop new rules regarding voting trustees' attendance at committees to be reviewed and ultimately approved by the board. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Governance and Nominating Committee is directed to develop the following material regarding emeritus trustees for board review and ultimate approval. 1, a proposed set of new criteria for electing emeritus trustees. 2, ways to optimize their experience and skill set in both committee and full board meetings. And 3, proposed new programming for emeritus trustees. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the term of office for term trustees is limited to 2 consecutive full 4-year terms with eligibility for 1 additional 4-year term after the lapse of 2 years. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Governance and Nominating Committee is directed to oversee drafting and propose revisions to the bylaws for board review and ultimate approval, which will implement the change in term limits for the term trustees as resolved above. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the vice chairperson is a required officer of the board, and that the board shall not have more than 2 vice chairpersons at one time. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Governance and Nominating Committee is directed to oversee drafting of a proposed revision to the bylaws for board review and ultimate approval, which will identify as vice chairpersons as a required officer, but would not permit more than 2 vice chairpersons to serve at one time. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the board approves the following standing committees, which will have the duties and powers articulated in charters of those committees as approved by the board: Mission and Academic Excellence, Research, Innovation and Partnerships, Finance and Budget, Property and Facilities, Investment, Audit, Risk and Compliance, Diversity, Equity, Inclusion and Belonging, and Governance, Nominating and Trusteeship. Now, therefore, be resolved that the authority of the Executive Committee shall be revised so that it may only act with the power of the authority of the board when the board is not in session, there is a pressing need, and a quorum of the board cannot be assembled for a special meeting. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the authority of the Executive Committee shall be revised to include the responsibility of setting the Chancellor and Chief Executive Officer's compensation, as well as those of officers of the board, except Assistant Treasurer and Associate and Assistant Secretaries, upon recommendation of the Chancellor. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Governance and Nominating Committee is directed to oversee drafting of new charters to establish the committees as resolved above, which will be submitted to the board for review and ultimate approval, and the current standing committees will remain in place until such approval is granted by the board. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Governance and Nominating Committee is directed to oversee the drafting of proposed revisions to the bylaws for submission to the board for review and ultimate approval, which are necessary to implement the changes to the Executive Committee's authority as resolved above. And now, therefore, be resolved that the Governance and Nominating Committee is directed to review and propose revisions to the Statement of Commitment and Responsibilities for the board review and ultimate approval. Again, that was a lot of resolves, but I think it does, Mr. Chairman, reflect ongoing discussions that we've had with the board and board members and the ongoing nature of this project, which is this is just the first step in terms of setting the terms, and there's a number of implementation steps thereafter. So with that, Mr. Chair, I would move the resolutions to improve board's governance and practices be approved by the board.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Discussion, sir. Any discussion?
Yes.
Okay. We've had the ayes. Do we have any opposed? Dawn?
Chair,
Yes, Dawn.
I commend the Nominating Governance Committee for their hard work. I approve of all of the resolutions with one exception, and that is the term trustee limit resolution. I oppose that for reasons stated earlier, that it does not apply to all voting trustees.
Okay, so we have ayes.
Well, I'll make a motion to approve what the chairman has offered.
Yep. Thank you, John. We've had
And
the
I will
move.
second.
We've had the second. We've had, Dawn had yes to all, but with a condition. We've had others, yes. Do we have any no's? Any abstentions? Okay, we have an abstention from Mr. Qantas. John Palusi, were you talking?
Yeah, Lou, no, can you hear me? I'm on
Yes,
my
we can
cell
now.
phone. I
Yeah,
wasn't
we
able
can
to
now.
see. I wasn't able to see what Carlos had sent because I had to move from my laptop to my cell. So I sent him and Paul a note saying I was going to abstain, but after listening to Dave articulate what he did, I'm voting yes.
Thank you, Mr. Palusi. Okay. Right? Okay. The
Good,
motion
thank you
is
very much, and I want
Thank you,
to,
David. The motion is approved.
great, thank you. I want to thank the board, but particularly thank the committee. This was a lot of work by a lot of good people on the committee and also staff and others, so much appreciated. So, emeritus trustee election. The Governance and Nominating Committee is charged with the responsibility of recommending to the board candidates for election as trustees of the university and for other offices. At a duly advertised public meeting this morning, the committee endorsed the recommendations of seven former trustees as candidates for the status of emeritus trustee of the University of Pittsburgh. The following candidates who have made The following candidates who have made exceptional contributions to the progress and welfare of the university and have served with distinction and devotion as trustees are Jane B. Allred, Nicholas Beckwith III, Cy Holzer, Keith E. Schaefer, Herbert S. Scheer, Thomas L. Van Kirk, and Marna Cupp Whittington. Mr. Chair, I move the resolution electing the candidates for the status of emeritus trustee be approved by the board.
I second it.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. 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 Are there any opposed? Are there any abstentions? Motion passed.
Okay, thank you. Election of board chairperson-elect. The Governance and Nominating Committee would like to recommend a candidate for the position of chairperson-elect. John Verbanek has served as dedicated and distinguished member of the Board of Trustees since 2007. Prior to the meeting, board members were given biographical information on the candidate. Chairperson Costello, I move that the vote be taken for the election of chairperson-elect of the Board of Trustees.
We have a second, Robbie? Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Do we have any opposed? Do we have any abstentions? Mr.
probably a good
Verbanek,
idea.
thank you for abstaining. You qualify for the position. Okay.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That ends the report of the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chavrin, and congratulations, John. I'd also just like to echo David's comments. The heavy lift here is incredible. The term heroic was used to me earlier today by somebody who understands what this committee has gone through in the diligence, the amount of work, the amount of effort. And this is something that's extremely necessary for this board and for all boards to go through this process and reevaluate itself and make hard decisions and put itself in a place to govern well going forward. So I commend everybody for that, and thank you all so much for your hard work. Okay, are there any additional new business? Any new business today? Okay, now I'd like to take this time to recognize a dedicated member of the university's leadership who's attending his last meeting today before he steps down this spring to take a position with his Georgetown University, and that's Chief Financial Officer Hari Sastry. The board has prepared a resolution that I would like to have read into the record, and we have asked this to be done by several members of the board. I'd like to call on Larry Merlot to begin the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Whereas Hari Sastry has had a distinguished and remarkable career in finance spanning over decades, including serving in the White House Office of Management and Budget and directing the Office of U.S. Foreign Assistance Resources at the Department of State. And whereas, following a national search, Hari Sastry was elected Senior Vice Chancellor and Chief Financial Officer of the University of Pittsburgh on September 28, 2018, and has become a key member of the senior leadership team. And
whereas during his tenure at the University of Pittsburgh, he has been a strategic leader and strong steward of the university's financial resources, managing a $3 billion operating budget and a $5.5 billion endowment. And whereas Hari Sastry successfully safeguarded the university's financial strength during the many uncertainties of the COVID-19 pandemic beginning in 2020. And
whereas, under his leadership, post-award financial operations strengthened to support an increase of $350 million in new research funding and culminating in the achievement of a remarkable research milestone surpassing $1 billion. And whereas Hari Sastry was pivotal in developing the new budget restart model, which incentivizes schools to generate revenue, achieve cost efficiencies, support strategic initiatives, and collaborate on research. And
whereas he additionally led several initiatives that strengthened and positioned the University of Pittsburgh for long-term growth impact, including the development of an enterprise risk management program, which provides comprehensive risk assessments to discern and plan for potential vulnerabilities. And whereas Hari Sastry directed the collaborative development of the university's second strategic plan, the Plan for Pitt, aligning and leveraging resources to achieving strategic priorities. And
whereas Senior Vice Chancellor and Chief Financial Officer, he championed supplier diversity, ensuring the University of Pittsburgh's role as a regional anchor institution committed to bettering economies and communities across the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And whereas Hari Sastry is recognized as a strong partner to the leadership across the university and its schools, he also provides insightful strategic counsel and an unyielding commitment to the university's missions and goals, consistently delivering exceptional support and guidance. And
whereas Hari Sastry has earned the admiration, affection, and respect of members of the Board of Trustees, as well as the university's administration, faculty, staff, students, and alumni for his integrity, dedication, loyalty, and devoted service to the University of Pittsburgh. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Trustees do hereby express their sincere appreciation for and profound gratitude to Hari Sastry for his outstanding leadership and exceptional contributions to the extraordinary progress of the University of Pittsburgh. And
be it further resolved that the members of the Board of Trustees wish Mr. Sastry continued success as he returns to Georgetown University, his alma mater, as Chief Financial Officer. And be it further resolved that this resolution be made a permanent part of the university's records and that it be suitably inscribed and presented to Hari Sastry as a symbol of gratitude for the leadership that he has provided and the high regard in which he is held by his many friends and colleagues at the University of Pittsburgh. I will move this forward.
second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you. The resolution has been passed. Please join me in a round of applause. Come on, Harry, we're going to get a picture. I'll editorialize it in my day job. I get to work with a lot of financial executives, a lot of CFOs, and there is none finer than Harry Sastry. So, Harry, it's been a pleasure. Now, is there any additional new business to come before this board? As a reminder, the next meeting of the board will be held on Thursday, April 4th, 2024. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you so much.